laughing at him. He is your father.
Two twin brothers mocked a dirty roadside beggar every single day. They called him useless. They called him a failure. Until one afternoon, the beggar looked at them, smiled sadly, and said just one sentence: "I used to carry you both like this, on my shoulders." Their mother collapsed. The crowd froze. And in that moment, their lives changed forever. This is not just a story. It's a warning. Before we continue, subscribe to this channel for deep, emotional stories that touch the heart and change lives. If you believe you should never judge anyone by their appearance, like this video and in the comments, tell me, have you ever judged someone and later regretted it? Now, let me tell you how everything began. Cold early morning. The kind that bites the skin and makes people pull their clothes tighter. The city was still half asleep. Streetlights were on. Traders were just arranging their tables. The sound of a distant mosque call mixed with the hum of early traffic. Inside a black, shiny SUV, the twins sat at the back seat. "Teo, stop pressing my leg," Tunde snapped. "I'm not pressing you." "Your leg is just too big," Teo replied, rolling his eyes. The driver glanced at them through the mirror and smiled. "Young masters, please behave. We are almost late." "We are not late," Tunde said proudly. "Our school waits for us." Both boys wore spotless uniforms. Their shirts were iron stiff. Their shoes shined like mirrors. Their bags smelled new. On their laps were big lunchboxes, heavy with food. Teo opened his lunchbox slightly and peeked inside. "Jollof rice again," he said. "Mama always repeats food." Tunde laughed. "At least it's not beans. Remember last term when she packed beans for one whole week?" "Don't remind me," Teo said. "I almost ran away from home." The car moved smoothly over the road. It passed broken shops, small houses, and then the market area. Outside, poor children walked to school barefoot. Some carried torn bags. Some had no bags at all. Tunde looked through the window and laughed softly. "Imagine walking to school like that." Teo shook his head. "Couldn't be me. Even the cold would kill me." The driver cleared his throat. "Be careful how you speak, young masters." Teo frowned. "Why?" The driver replied calmly, "Life changes." Tunde scoffed. "Not for us." As the car slowed near the junction, a dirty man sat by the roadside. His clothes were torn. His hair was rough. His eyes were sunken, but sharp. He lifted his head and stared at the twins as the car passed. Teo noticed him and laughed. "See that man? Does he even bathe?" Tunde leaned closer to the window. "He looks like a walking dustbin." They both laughed. The beggar did not laugh. He only watched them, his eyes following the car until it disappeared down the road. Inside the car, the twins were still joking. "Imagine if that man was our father," Tunde said mockingly. Teo burst out laughing. "God forbid. My father drives a better car than this." The driver's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He said nothing. The school gate came into view. Big and beautiful. Other expensive cars lined up. Students waved at the twins. The SUV stopped. "Have a good day, young masters," the driver said. Teo and Tunde stepped out confidently, laughing, bags on their shoulders, lunchboxes swinging in their hands. Behind them, far away on the cold roadside, the beggar slowly stood up, placed his trembling hands on his knees, and whispered to himself, "My boys." Then the morning swallowed his voice. They lived in a big house. One of those houses people slowed down to look at when they passed. High fence. Tall gate. Clean compound. The kind of home that made outsiders think life inside was perfect. Inside the sitting room, the air conditioner hummed softly. The television was on, but nobody was watching it. Mama Aid sat at the dining table. Bundles of money were spread before her. Notes of different colors. She counted slowly, carefully, her lips moving as her fingers worked. Her face looked calm, but her eyes were tired. Every few seconds, she checked her phone, then returned to the money. Teo and Tunde walked in together. They dropped their bags at the same time. Teo sniffed the air. "Mama, I don't smell food." Tunde looked around the room dramatically. No plate on the table. No spoon. No sound of pot. Teo gasped. "Mama, are we eating air again today?" Mama Aid did not look up. I am busy. Tunde laughed and sat on the arm of the chair. Busy doing what? Making invisible soup. Teo added, You have been so busy to make our meal, and the nanny is on leave. Should we chew the dining table? Mama Aid finally looked up. You boys are not serious. Tunde smiled. We are very serious. Hunger is serious. Teo touched his stomach. My stomach is already crying. Mama Aid sighed and pushed the money into a neat pile. There is food in the fridge. Tunde raised his hands. Cold food. Mama, we are rich, not prisoners. Teo nodded. At least prisoners get hot food. Mama Aid shook her head, trying not to smile. You will eat whatever you find. Tunde stood up. See suffering. Big house, empty stomach. Teo laughed. If people know the truth, they will stop greeting us with respect. Mama Aid stared at them for a moment. Her smile faded just a little. She gathered the money and put it inside a brown envelope. Go and change, she said softly. I will sort the rest. The twins were still laughing as they walked away. Behind them, Mama Aid leaned back in her chair. She stared at the envelope in her hand. The big house suddenly felt very quiet. The twins were in their room, tossing clothes into their school bags. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, cutting lines of light across the floor. Teo zipped his bag shut and turned to Tunde. Our father ran away, Teo said, shrugging. Tunde rolled his eyes. No, he didn't run. He died. Mama told me. Teo laughed bitterly. Died? Or disappeared? There's a difference. Tunde slammed his hand on the bed. I'm telling you, he's gone. He left us. You weren't even there, so don't make it sound like you know better. Mama Aid's voice suddenly came from the hallway. Enough. Her tone was sharp, commanding. She walked in, her eyes flashing. Stop talking about him. The twins froze. Even in their big house, her anger could make the walls feel smaller. Teo mumbled, We were just. Just what? Mama Aid snapped. Do you think talking about him will bring him back? Do you think remembering him will fix anything? She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. He's not here. Stop asking. Stop saying his name. Understand? Tunde bit his lip, trying not to reply, but the words escaped anyway. But Mama, if he's alive, why doesn't he come back? If he's alive, he's useless. Mama Aid's hands went to her face. She sank into the chair, closing her eyes. The room felt heavier. Teo sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. He hated seeing her like this. Tunde sat beside him quietly. I'm sorry, Mama. Mama Aid shook her head without opening her eyes. Don't be sorry. There is nothing to say. Your father is a memory. That's all he is. Teo whispered, almost to himself, a useless memory. Mama Aid flinched at the words, but she said nothing. She just got up and left the room, the sound of her heels echoing down the hallway. The twins were left alone. Silence filled the room. Not the comfortable silence of a home, but the heavy, sad silence of things left unsaid. Tunde broke it first. Do you think he's really dead? Teo shook his head. I don't know. But even if he's alive, maybe he really is useless. Tunde didn't answer. He stared at the window, at the bright morning light outside, and wondered if the man who was their father had truly vanished, or if life had just been too cruel to let them know the truth. The two sat in silence, packing their bags, their laughter from earlier replaced with a weight they couldn't shake. Near the crowded market, by a dusty roadside, a man sat hunched over on a cracked wooden stool. His clothes were old and torn, hanging loosely from his thin frame. Every patch told a story of neglect, every rip a season of hardship. His shoes were worn down to the soles, and his socks, if he had any, were long gone. A long, unkempt beard framed a face that had known sorrow, but his eyes, sharp, deep, and unsettling, watched everything. He never begged loudly. He never shouted. He simply sat, hands resting on his knees, head tilted slightly forward, observing the world pass by. Vendors shouted prices. Children ran past, dropping coins here and there. The market smelled of fried food, ripe fruit, and sweat. And through it all, the beggar's gaze remained fixed, unwavering. See that man, a fruit seller whispered to another. He's been there for days. Never moves. Never asks for anything. Let him be, the other replied. He scares customers away with that look. The beggar's eyes, though sunken, flicked toward the street every now and then. He seemed particularly interested in two young boys walking to school each morning. Well-dressed. Bright uniforms. Shoes that shone even in the early morning sun. Heavy bags swung carelessly on their shoulders. And yet, he never approached them. He never called out. He simply watched. One day, as Teo and Tunde laughed over a dropped coin, Teo nudged his brother. Look at that man. He looks like he hasn't bathed in years. I think he's part of the market now. Tunde laughed. Maybe he sleeps on the corn sacks at night. Poor man. Can't even scare a rat. The beggar did not flinch. He only lifted his head slightly, revealing the pale lines of his face beneath the dirt, and studied the boys as though he could see straight into their bones. Why does he stare like that? Teo asked, a little uneasy now. Probably imagining what he'll have for lunch if we drop some of ours, Tunde joked. They laughed again, loud enough for passers-by to glance over, but no one paid the beggar any attention. To them, he was invisible, a part of the scenery. Broken, silent, forgotten. And yet, the beggar knew the boys. He remembered every step, every laugh, every careless word. He remembered the shape of their faces from when they were small. And in the quiet moments when the market's noise faded, he whispered their names under his breath, just softly enough that no one could hear. My boys. The world passed him by, but he never turned away. For the beggar, every day waiting by the roadside was a day closer to something he had lost, something he had never stopped searching for, something the boys would never suspect. The twins were walking to school one bright morning, their bags swinging carelessly on their shoulders. The sun shone warmly on their crisp uniforms, and the city was alive with the sounds of morning. Traders shouting prices, hawkers calling out, and the distant roar of cars. Ahead, by the side of the dusty road near the market, the beggar sat as he always did. His clothes were torn, his beard long and matted, his eyes fixed on the world but not on anything in particular. To the twins, he looked like nothing more than a shadow on the roadside. Teo nudged Tunde and whispered, loud enough for nearby children to hear, See this old scarecrow? Tunde chuckled, leaning closer. Is he guarding the road or decorating it? Maybe both. They laughed, the sound sharp and careless, echoing across the pavement. Their laughter drew attention. A few other children walking the same way noticed and joined in. Look at him, one girl said, pointing at the beggar. He looks like he sleeps in the market every night. Or maybe he's a statue someone forgot to take away, another boy added, and everyone laughed harder. The twins joined in, pointing and making exaggerated gestures, pretending to be scared of the beggar. Careful! Teo shouted. He might throw invisible stones at us. Tunde pretended to jump back. Run! The monster is coming! The other kids squealed and ran around in playful mock fear, their laughter ringing in the morning air. But through all of it, the beggar said nothing. Not a word. He did not flinch, did not move, did not even glance at the mocking children beyond a slow, steady stare. His eyes, deep and sharp, followed every movement. And though his face was covered in dirt and his beard tangled, there was a calmness about him that made it clear he was not afraid, nor angry. He simply watched, waiting, patient, silent. The twins, noticing that he didn't react, laughed even louder. He's not even scared. Teo shouted. Maybe he's pretending to be brave, Tunde said. Or maybe he's too old to care about us. The children continued their teasing, rolling their eyes and making faces, but the beggar stayed the same. Sitting, watching, silent. And in that quiet patience hidden beneath dirt and rags he remembered the faces of two small boys he had once carried on his shoulders. Long before they learned to mock, long before they thought they were better than anyone. For now, though, he said nothing. He only waited. One crisp morning, the sun had barely risen when Mama Aide started the car, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The twins, Teo and Tunde, were in the backseat, their school bags neatly on their laps, lunchboxes beside them, uniforms crisp and shoes polished to a shine. They laughed and jostled each other as the car rolled out of the driveway, the quiet hum of the engine filling the otherwise still morning. As they drove past the familiar streets, the beggar was there, seated by the roadside as he always was. His clothes hung in rags, his beard wild and unkempt, his face streaked with dust and dirt. To anyone else, he was just another part of the morning scene, a forgotten man, invisible to the world. But he was different with the twins. Teo pressed his face to the window, pointing at the man. "Mama, look at him. He's probably been sleeping in the dust all night." Tunde laughed. "Or maybe he's part of the road now. Maybe he's a statue no one remembers to remove." The beggar did not flinch. He did not hold out a hand. He never begged from them. All he did was stare, quietly, his gaze fixed on the twins' faces as though he could see every thought running through their minds. "Why doesn't he ask us for money?" Teo asked curiously. Tunde shrugged. "Maybe he knows we don't carry cash. Or maybe he's too proud, or too lazy," he added with a laugh. Mama Aid, driving ahead, kept her eyes on the road, but she noticed the beggar's stare in the side mirror. It was intense, almost piercing, and it sent a chill through her. Something about the way he looked, so calm, so steady, yet so full of knowing, made her stomach tighten. As they drew closer, she could hear, or thought she could hear, a soft whisper carried by the morning breeze. "Teo. Tunde." She blinked, thinking it was just her imagination. The twins didn't seem to notice. They were laughing again, pointing at the man. "Maybe he's talking to us," Teo said jokingly. "He wants to join our school." Tunde shook his head. "No way. He'd probably fail every class." Mama Aid's heart skipped a beat. She caught a full glimpse of the beggar as they passed by slowly at the traffic light. His eyes were locked on the twins, unwavering, almost as if he were memorizing every detail. Their smiles, the shape of their faces, even the way Tunde had tilted his head. For a moment, she froze, her hands stiff on the wheel. The engine's hum became distant in her ears. The laughter of her sons, the honking of cars, the shouting of street vendors, all faded into the background. "Mama, what's wrong?" Teo asked, leaning forward. I'm fine," she said quickly, forcing her voice to sound normal, though it trembled just slightly. "Just focus on your school today." But inside, her mind raced. Something about the beggar's stare, the way he whispered their names, had stirred a memory she had buried deep for 15 years. She couldn't explain it, but a cold shiver ran down her spine. The man wasn't just a stranger. Somehow, she knew, deep in her bones, that this beggar had once been close to them, had once been someone they all loved. The light turned green, and the car moved on, but Mama Aid could not shake the image of the beggar sitting there, silent, patient, his eyes following them as if he had waited his entire life just to see her children once more. And though the twins laughed, oblivious to the weight of the moment, Mama Aid's heart knew something she could not yet speak, a truth hidden in the quiet, steady gaze of a man everyone else ignored. Mama Aid woke up in the middle of the night, her heart racing, her sheets tangled around her legs. The room was dark, but her mind was alive with memories she had tried to bury for years. Her breathing was fast and shallow, and tears streaked her face even before she opened her eyes fully. She sat upright in bed, clutching her chest as if holding herself together could stop the pain. The shadows on the wall seemed to shift, and suddenly, the past was not past at all. She remembered the day it all fell apart. Police officers had stormed into their home early in the morning. Her husband, had been dragged out in handcuffs, his face pale, his eyes wide with disbelief. "No. Stop. What are you doing?" she had screamed, trying to grab his arm. "Step back," one officer had barked, shoving her aside. Neighbors had gathered outside, peering over the fence, whispering, laughing cruelly. "Your husband is a thief," one neighbor had shouted. "Who would have thought? Such a respectable man," another added, smirking. Mama Aid had fallen to her knees, reaching for him, but he was gone, carried off into the waiting police van. She remembered the sound of the doors slamming, the cold metal of the van against the ground, and the crowd's mocking laughter ringing in her ears. Now, years later, she woke screaming, tears rolling freely down her cheeks. "I should have waited. I should have believed you," she cried into the darkness, her voice cracking. "I should have known. I should have trusted you." Her hands trembled as she pressed them against her face. She felt the weight of every insult, every whisper, every accusation that had poisoned the air around her for 15 long years. Teo and Tunde stirred in their beds at the sound of her cries. "Mama." Tunde called softly, his voice filled with worry. "Sure, go back to sleep, my sons," she murmured, though her voice was barely steady. She sank back into the pillows, hugging herself, her body shaking. Memories of the beggar, of her husband's quiet strength before the arrest, of the betrayal that had torn her family apart, all came flooding back. "I should have waited. I should have believed you," she repeated, whispering the words over and over, as if saying them would undo the years of pain. But she knew it wouldn't. Not yet. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the storm of grief that had taken hold inside that large, quiet house. Mama Aid stayed awake, haunted by the past, the cries echoing in her heart long after her voice had faded. 5 years ago, their father's life was simple but happy. He worked hard, ran a small business, and cared deeply for his family. Everyone in the neighborhood knew him as honest and reliable. But all of that changed in a single, cruel day. It started with a visit from a powerful man in town, a wealthy businessman with sharp eyes and a cold smile. "You've been handling my accounts for months," the man said, voice smooth but with an edge. "I trust you not to fail me." "I would never let you down, sir," their father replied, confident, unaware of the trap set for him. That very night, the man secretly altered the records. The next morning, the town was buzzing with shocking news. "You stole my money," the powerful man shouted in the crowded market square, pointing directly at him. "You've betrayed my trust." Their father stepped forward, hands raised. "No, I didn't. I swear, I did not touch a kobo of your money. Check the books, ask anyone." But the man only laughed, cruel and sharp. "The books are clear. My witnesses have spoken. Your word means nothing." The whispers began immediately. "Who would have thought such an honest man could do this?" someone said, shaking their head. "Maybe he was greedy all along," another neighbor added. Slowly, the community that had once respected him turned against him. People he had helped, people who had called him friend, looked at him with suspicion. The children stared silently in the streets, and even the shopkeepers avoided his gaze. Mama Aid ran to him, tears streaming down her face. "No, please. You must believe him. He is innocent." The man sneered. "He is guilty, madam. There is no hope for him now." Soon after, the police came, acting swiftly at the wealthy man's command. Hands pulled him into handcuffs, dragging him through the street where neighbors gossiped and shook their heads. "Wait. Listen to me," he shouted. "I am innocent. I swear." "Quiet," the officer barked. "You will explain yourself in court." He turned his head toward Mama Aid and the young children, his eyes heavy with pain but still fierce with determination. "I will come back for my family," he promised, his voice trembling but firm. "No matter what happens, I will find you. I will make this right. I swear it." Mama Aid fell to her knees, clutching the children to her chest. "I will wait for you. I will not give up. I will hold on to hope." And with that, he was taken away. The powerful man smiled, thinking the family broken. The community whispered that justice had been done. But the father's heart remained unbroken. He had promised himself, and now he had promised them, that one day he would return to them. 5 long years would pass, each day a battle against despair, each moment a hope that he would reunite with the family that was taken from him unjustly. Even in prison, even in silence, he held on to that promise. "I will come back for my family." One bright morning, Mama Aid decided to take the twins to the market. It was a small errand, really, just to buy a few things for the house, but Teo and Tunde were excited. They walked ahead, bags swinging and shoes clicking on the dusty road, laughing and joking with each other. Mama Aid followed behind, carrying her purse and trying to keep track of their chatter. The market was alive with noise. Traders shouted prices, children ran between the stalls, and the smell of fried food mixed with fresh vegetables and ripe fruits. Among the crowd, by his usual spot near the corner where the sun hit just right, the beggar sat quietly. His clothes were dirty, his beard unkempt, his face lined with years of hardship. People passed him without a glance, but he watched everything, especially the twins. Teo nudged Tunde and whispered, "There he is again. Our favorite market decoration." Tunde grinned. "Statue man. He hasn't moved in days. I think he's glued to that spot." As they walked closer, Teo picked up a small sachet of water from the pile of goods they had bought. He shook it in his hand, then, with a mischievous grin, poured it slowly near the beggar's feet. Tunde followed, pouring another sachet. "Look at him. He's not even reacting." The twins burst into laughter, loud and careless, their voices cutting through the market noise. The other children around them noticed and began giggling too, some joining in by pointing or making faces. Teo wiped his eyes, still laughing. This is what failure looks like. Tunde slapped his knee, nearly falling over in laughter. If you need a guide on what losing looks like, just look here. Mama Aid's face tightened. She had been standing just a few steps behind, watching the scene unfold. Her eyes narrowed, not from anger at the laughter itself, but from a strange feeling she couldn't explain. There was something in the way the beggar looked at the boys, something steady, calm, and painfully familiar, that made her heart skip. "Boys," she called sharply, her voice cutting through their laughter. "Stop that right now." The twins looked at her, surprised, still giggling. "But Mama, he's just sitting there. He didn't even react." "He doesn't need to react." Mama Aid snapped, stepping closer. Her gaze was fixed on the beggar, who still didn't move, still didn't speak, yet seemed to be staring straight at the twins as if he could see into them. Teo and Tunde finally stopped laughing, sensing something in their mother's tone. "Mama, what's wrong?" Tunde asked. Mama Aid didn't answer at first. Her eyes were wide, frozen on the beggar's face. She could feel a strange, familiar ache in her chest, the kind that comes from remembering someone you thought you had lost. The beggar's lips moved slightly, whispering something softly, almost inaudible over the market noise. It sounded like a name, a familiar sound that tugged at Mama Aid's memory. She blinked rapidly, trying to focus, but the words were gone before she could catch them. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the twins. "Come on, let's finish what we came for," she said softly, her voice a little unsteady. The twins followed, still a little confused, looking back at the beggar. They didn't know why Mama Aid was suddenly so quiet, so tense. Only the beggar remained, sitting patiently, silently, his eyes fixed on them, as if waiting for a moment that was still far away but coming closer every day. The market was unusually quiet that afternoon. The sun was high, casting harsh shadows across the dusty road, but the twins hardly noticed. They had been laughing, joking, and teasing the beggar again, throwing sachets of water near him, mocking his tattered clothes, and calling him names. Other children had joined in, laughing too, pointing fingers, making faces. The twins looked at her, surprised, still giggling. "But Mama, he's just sitting there. He didn't even react." "He doesn't need to react." Mama Aid snapped, stepping closer. Her gaze was fixed on the beggar, who still didn't move, still didn't speak, yet seemed to be staring straight at the twins as if he could see into them. Teo and Tunde finally stopped laughing, sensing something in their mother's tone. "Mama, what's wrong?" Tunde asked. Mama Aid didn't answer at first. Her eyes were wide, frozen on the beggar's face. She could feel a strange, familiar ache in her chest, the kind that comes from remembering someone you thought you had lost. The beggar's lips moved slightly, whispering something softly, almost inaudible over the market noise. It sounded like a name, a familiar sound that tugged at Mama Aid's memory. She blinked rapidly, trying to focus, but the words were gone before she could catch them. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the twins. "Come on, let's finish what we came for," she said softly, her voice a little unsteady. The twins followed, still a little confused, looking back at the beggar. They didn't know why Mama Aid was suddenly so quiet, so tense. Only the beggar remained, sitting patiently, silently, his eyes fixed on them, as if waiting for a moment that was still far away but coming closer every day. The market was unusually quiet that afternoon. The sun was high, casting harsh shadows across the dusty road, but the twins hardly noticed. They had been laughing, joking, and teasing the beggar again, throwing sachets of water near him, mocking his tattered clothes, and calling him names. Other children had joined in, laughing too, pointing fingers, making faces. But then something changed. The beggar lifted his head slowly, his long, matted beard shaking slightly. His eyes, sunken and tired from years of hardship, glistened with tears that reflected the harsh sunlight. His body trembled, not with fear, not with anger, but with a deep, quiet emotion that made the market seem suddenly still. Teo and Tunde froze mid-laugh, looking at him with confusion. Even the other children stopped, sensing something strange in the air. The laughter died. Mama Aid, standing a few steps away, felt her heart stop. There was something in the beggar's eyes, something she could not name, but it made her legs weak and her breath catch. Then, in a voice calm and steady, yet filled with sorrow and weight, the beggar spoke. I used to carry you both like this. He bent slightly forward, raising a hand as if he were holding two tiny children on his shoulders, the motion slow and deliberate. The twins stared at him, their mouths opening and closing, words caught somewhere in their throats. On my shoulders, he finished, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The sounds of the market, the shouting of traders, the rustling of plastic bags, the clatter of shoes on the dusty road, faded into nothing. The children who had laughed moments before hid behind adults, their eyes wide with fear and awe. Mama Aid gasped and took a step forward, her hands covering her mouth. Tears streamed down her face as recognition hit her all at once. Adekunle, she whispered, her voice trembling. The beggar nodded slowly, the tears spilling freely now. Yes, it's me. I have waited so long to see you again. Teo and Tunde stumbled backward, clutching each other. What do you mean? Tunde stammered, his voice shaking. Who are you? The beggar's eyes softened, full of love, pain, and a lifetime of longing. I am your father, he said simply. Your father, Teo, and you, Tunde. Do you remember the little boy who would cling to my shoulders? The little boy who laughed when I lifted him high. The twins stared, speechless, unable to move. The weight of the moment pressed down on them. All the laughter, all the mockery, all the teasing, they felt small, almost meaningless, against the truth that stood before them. Mama Aid fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Oh God! My husband! My children! I should have waited. I should have believed you. The beggar stepped forward slowly, his face lined with sorrow and love, and knelt before her. I never stopped thinking of you, he whispered. I never stopped promising myself that I would return, no matter what it took. The twins sank to the ground, their laughter gone, replaced with tears and shock. Father? Teo asked, his voice barely audible. Yes, their father replied, his calm voice breaking now. It is me. And I am here, finally, I am here. The market around them seemed to fade. The traders, the children, the dust, the noise, all disappeared in that moment. There was only the family, reunited after 5 long years, and the silent, powerful truth of a father's love that had never faded. Mama Aid had been standing just a few steps away, her hands clutching the shopping basket tightly, her mind distracted by the noise and chaos of the market. She had watched the twins pour water near the beggar, laugh, and point at him, feeling a strange unease she couldn't explain. Then, suddenly, the world seemed to shift. The beggar spoke. His voice was calm, steady, and yet heavy with emotion. His words, slow and deliberate, reached her ears. I used to carry you both like this, on my shoulders. Mama Aid froze. Her hands, still gripping the basket, loosened automatically. The basket slipped from her fingers and fell to the ground with a loud clatter, spilling fruit and coins across the dusty market floor. She didn't notice. She couldn't. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the ground. The tears came suddenly, like a dam breaking. She pressed her hands to her face, but they could not hold back the flood. She cried uncontrollably, her sobs loud enough to make nearby traders and passers-by stop in their tracks. Oh my God, she gasped between tears. It can't be, it can't be. Her body shook with grief, with relief, with the weight of 5 long years of waiting and fearing the worst. The market around her seemed to disappear. All she could see was him, the man she had loved, the man who had been taken from her unjustly. She lifted her head suddenly, her eyes wide, her voice rising with a mix of joy and desperation. She screamed his name so loudly that it carried across the market, cutting through the shouts of traders and the chatter of children. Adekunle. The beggar froze at the sound of her voice, his own eyes filling with tears. The twins, still stunned, stepped back, staring at their mother and then at the man who now seemed impossibly familiar, impossibly real. Mama Aid's hands reached out instinctively, trembling as she ran toward him. Her voice cracked and broke repeatedly as she called his name again, over and over. Adekunle. Oh, Adekunle. You're here, you're really here. He dropped to one knee, tears streaming down his dirt-streaked face. Yes, Mama. I promised I would come back. I promised I would find you. She threw herself at him, hugging him tightly, shaking, sobbing, and laughing all at once. The twins ran to join her, wrapping their small arms around his waist. The market around them seemed to fade entirely. The noise, the dust, the curious onlookers, all disappeared. There was only the family, reunited, crying and trembling, as the long years of pain, separation, and misunderstanding finally fell away in that one perfect, shattering moment. I never stopped thinking of you. I never stopped loving you, he whispered into her hair. Mama Aid buried her face against his chest, still shaking, still crying, still shouting his name. Adekunle, my love, my husband, my children, my children. And in that moment, the world held its breath, letting the tears of 5 years fall freely, washing away the past in a flood of recognition, forgiveness, and overwhelming love. The beggar knelt slowly in front of Mama Aid and the twins, the weight of years and hardship clear in every movement. His hand shook slightly as he reached up and removed the ragged cap he had worn for so long. Dust and sweat fell from the worn fabric, and the sunlight touched his face, revealing lines of age, pain, and endurance. For a moment, the twins stared, confused. The man was just a beggar, or so they thought, but there was something familiar in the shape of his eyes, the curve of his jaw. Then, he lifted the edge of his shirt slightly at the neckline, revealing a faint scar across his chest. It was old, faded, but unmistakable. Mama Aid gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Your father, that scar, she whispered, her voice trembling. I remember. You always told me about it. The beggar nodded slowly. I remember how I got it when we were playing in the yard. You called me Tiny Hands, remember? His voice was quiet, soft, filled with longing. That was your childhood nickname for me. Teo and Tunde stepped back, shaking their heads violently, disbelief etched on their faces. No, that can't be, you're lying. Tunde shouted. I don't remember any tiny hands. Teo stammered, his eyes wide. You're just some random man. The beggar's lips trembled, but he said nothing more. His eyes, full of tears, looked straight at them, full of patience, of love, of something they could not yet understand. Mama Aid, however, could not stop herself. She rushed forward, throwing her arms around him. Her hands pressed tightly against his back, as if holding him could make up for all the years of absence, all the pain, all the fear. Adekunle, my love, my husband, it really is you, she whispered into his ear, her voice choked with emotion. It's really you. I knew it all along. The twins watched, frozen. Their minds struggled to accept the truth. The beggar they had laughed at, the man they had called a failure, the man their mother had warned them not to ignore, it was their father. Teo's voice cracked. Mama, really, that's him? Mama Aid held him tighter, ignoring the question, her tears soaking his worn clothes. Yes, my children. This is your father. The one who promised, the one who never stopped loving you. The beggar, now their father, closed his eyes for a moment, letting her embrace him. His hands rested on her shoulders, trembling, as if the years of struggle and pain could be washed away in this one moment. I waited so long, he whispered. Every day, every night. I thought of you. I thought of all of you. Mama Aid pressed her face against his chest again, rocking slightly. And I prayed. I prayed you would come back. The twins, slowly, began to step closer, still unsure, still shaking. Their hands hovered in the air, wanting to touch, wanting to believe. Mama Aid noticed and pulled them into the hug as well. Come here, my sons, she said, her voice strong now. This is your father. Your real father. Never forget him. The three of them clung together, mother, father, and sons, while the market carried on around them, the world outside fading into insignificance. In that embrace, 15 years of pain, laughter, longing, and love collided, and for the first time in a long time, they were truly together. The family stood together in the middle of the dusty market, the sunlight cutting sharp lines across the ground, but none of them noticed. The twins clung to their mother's skirts, still unsure, still trembling, while their father, the beggar who had been a stranger for so many years, knelt before them. He took a deep, shuddering breath, as if drawing strength from the years of pain he had carried alone. My children, he began, his voice low and raw, carrying the weight of 15 long years. I need you to understand what happened to me, why I disappeared. Mama Aid held his hands, her own shaking, urging him to speak. I was taken, accused of something I did not do. Stolen money, they said it was mine. But it was a lie. A powerful man lied, and the world believed him. His hands trembled slightly as he clenched them together. Prison. Prison destroyed me. Every day, I fought to survive, to hold on to who I was. Every night, I thought of you, your mother, my sons. Teo and Tunde exchanged a glance. They had never imagined their father suffering like this. Teo's voice was barely a whisper. You were in prison all this time. Yes, he replied, tears rolling down his dirt-streaked cheeks. And every day I tried to figure out how to come back to you. I searched for you everywhere. Every street, every market, every house I could find. I had nothing but hope and love to guide me. Mama Aid's voice trembled. And shame. Did shame keep you away? He nodded slowly, looking down. Yes, shame kept me hidden. I was accused. The world turned against me. I could not show my face. I could not see my children, knowing how they might look at me. The man they were told had stolen from others. I was afraid that my sons would hate me before I even reached them. The twins' faces grew pale, the laughter and teasing of the past seeming foolish and cruel in the face of this truth. I did not want to be remembered as a failure, he continued, his voice breaking now. So I chose. I chose to beg, to sit in the streets, to wear rags, just so I could watch you from afar, from a distance. I wanted to see your faces, hear your laughter, even if it pained me. I wanted to know you were safe. I wanted to be near you without hurting you with the shame I carried. Tunde's voice shook. All this time, you were just watching us. Yes, he said softly, nodding. Every day, every laugh, every step you took to school, every joke you made at me. I remembered it all. And I waited. I waited for the right moment to come back, to be worthy of you again. Mama Aid sobbed, pressing her face into his chest. Oh, my love, my heart, how I prayed you would come back. How I hoped we would see you again. The twins slowly stepped closer, still unsure, but drawn by the truth, by the love that radiated from the man before them. I am here now, he whispered, holding out his arms to them. I am broken, yes, but I am here. And I will never leave you again. Teo and Tunde, mouths open, eyes wide, hesitated only a moment before they ran into his embrace. Mama Aid joined them, and together, the four of them clung to each other, letting the years of separation, shame, and pain fall away. The beggar, the man who had endured prison, loneliness, and humiliation, finally felt the warmth of his family's love surrounding him. In that embrace, the silence of the market, the laughter of the children, and the rush of the world outside faded. There was only them, finally together, finally whole. The air around them felt heavy, almost sacred. The market noise, the shouting of traders, the clatter of shoes, the rustling of plastic bags, faded into the background. All that mattered now was the man before them, the father they had mocked, laughed at, and called names for years without realizing who he truly was. Teo and Tunde froze for a moment, staring at his worn face, the familiar scar, the eyes filled with tears. Their mother's sobs filled their ears, but their own hearts pounded with shame, guilt, and disbelief. Slowly, as if the weight of the truth pressed their knees to the ground, they sank, kneeling before him. Tunde began, his voice cracking. He buried his face in his hands, shaking uncontrollably. We are so sorry. Teo cried, the words tumbling out in a rush. We didn't know. We laughed at you. Tunde's sobs grew louder. We laughed at our own blood. Our father. He shook his head violently, tears streaming down his face. We were cruel, we were so cruel. Mama Aid looked on, holding him close while her other sons sobbed beside her. Sure, it's okay, she murmured, her voice trembling. They didn't know. The father, kneeling before them, opened his arms slightly, not with anger, not with resentment, but with love that had endured 15 long years. My children, he whispered, voice soft but steady. It is okay. You are here now. That is what matters. That is what I needed. Teo shook his head, sobbing harder. No, it's not okay. We laughed at you. We made fun of you. We treated you like nothing. We mocked you. We didn't even see you for who you were, Tunde added, his hands pressed together as if in prayer. We hurt you with our laughter. Mama Aid held both of them close. Sure, my sons, you must understand, he never stopped loving you. He was waiting for the day you would see him. The twins buried their faces in his worn clothes, their tears soaking his shirt. Father, we are so sorry, we are so sorry, Teo repeated over and over. We didn't know it was you. We will never forgive ourselves if we ever forget this, Tunde whispered, shaking. We were wrong, so wrong. The father, still kneeling, pulled them closer. I know, he said quietly. I know it hurt. But I am here. That is what matters. I am here. And we will never be apart again. The three of them clung together in the middle of the dusty market, their sobs mixing with Mama Aid's cries, a symphony of pain, relief, and love. The twins, broken by shame yet held by their father's unwavering embrace, finally understood the depth of the love they had mocked and the cost of 15 years lost. And in that moment, kneeling, crying like children, apologizing with every ounce of their hearts, they finally began to heal. The market around them began to stir again, but in a different way this time. The noise of traders shouting prices and children running between stalls seemed to fade into murmurs. People were watching. Eyes wide, whispers spreading like fire. The neighbors had gathered slowly, drawn by the commotion, by the cries, by the unmistakable recognition in Mama Aid's voice. And then they saw him, dirty, ragged, haggard, but unmistakably him. The same man they had accused, the same man they had chased from the community 15 years ago. Is it really him? One woman whispered, clutching her shawl tightly. I can't believe it, another muttered, covering her mouth with her hand. Her eyes were moist, and she looked down, ashamed of herself. Some people's faces twisted with guilt. We drove him away. All those years, we were wrong, one old neighbor said, shaking his head. Others avoided eye contact entirely, pretending not to see, their voices barely above a whisper. Just leave him alone. He's returned. Let him be, a man said, glancing nervously at the ground. A few of the older women couldn't hold back their tears. Oh God, one whispered, her hands pressed to her chest. I didn't know the truth. Mama Aid didn't notice the murmurs at first, too busy holding her husband, too lost in the weight of finally having him back. The twins clung to him, their faces still wet with tears. He's our father, Teo whispered, voice small, almost afraid to be heard. We laughed. We didn't know. The neighbors continued to murmur among themselves. All this time, we judged him, one said quietly, shaking his head. Another added, voice trembling. And now, he's back, after all these years. Some of them stepped closer cautiously, wanting to see, to witness the reunion, but the shame in their eyes kept them at a distance. They had been part of the crowd that had condemned him, that had believed the lies. And now seeing him whole and alive brought a mixture of guilt, fear, and awe. He never hurt anyone, an elderly man said, voice low. He only loved his family, and we cast him out. Even the children in the crowd watched quietly, learning in that moment how powerful lies and fear could be, and how love and patience could endure beyond the cruelty of the world. Mama Aid finally looked up, meeting their eyes, and with a quiet authority, she said, He is my husband. He is the father of my children. Whatever you whispered, whatever you believed, it is your shame. But he is here, and nothing else matters. The whispers continued, but now they were mixed with awe and respect. Some neighbors silently wiped their tears, some stared at the ground, and a few stepped back, unable to bear the weight of their own past actions. But all of them knew they were witnessing something extraordinary, a reunion that healed wounds older than any of them. And in the middle of it all, the family clung to each other, oblivious to the whispers, to the shame, and to the eyes of the world. For the first time in 15 years, they were together, and nothing else mattered. The reunion had left the market buzzing with whispers, but Mama Aid's focus was entirely on the man before her. She took his hand gently, guiding him toward the car they had brought to the market. His steps were slow, unsteady, and cautious, but he followed her willingly. The twins clung to his other hand, their small fingers gripping his like they were afraid he might vanish again. As the car hummed softly along the road, Mama Aid stole glances at him. The man who had been a beggar, a prisoner, a shadow of his former self, now sat in the seat beside her. His clothes were worn and tattered, the dust of the streets still clinging to them, but there was a light in his eyes she hadn't seen in 15 years, hope, relief, and love. Are you hungry? She asked softly, her voice trembling. He nodded. Yes. I am, but I don't. I'm not used to. I forgot how it feels to sit at a table. The twins giggled lightly, still unsure how to act, then quickly sobered when they noticed the fatigue in his eyes. Father, Tunde said gently, don't worry. We'll help you. When they arrived home, the large house seemed too quiet for the momentous occasion. Mama Aid guided him to the dining room, where a small, simple meal had been prepared: rice, stew, and a few vegetables, nothing extravagant, but enough to mark the day. The warm scent filled the room, mingling with the faint smell of dust and sweat from his clothes. He sat down slowly, hands trembling slightly as he reached for the food. Teo noticed immediately. Wait, father, let me help, he said, picking up a spoonful of rice. Here, try this. Tunde followed, scooping some stew carefully and offering it to him. Here, take a little at a time. Don't worry, father. We'll help you. He looked at them, eyes glistening with tears, and nodded. Thank you both, he whispered. He took a small bite, then paused, unsure how to swallow. His hand shook, and the twins held his plate, gently guiding the food to his mouth. Mama Aid watched from across the table, smiling through her own tears. She could see the struggle in his eyes, the hesitation, the unfamiliarity of being cared for at a table again, but also the joy in finally being with his family. Do you remember, she said softly, how we used to eat together on Christmas when the children were small? He smiled faintly, a tear slipping down his cheek. I remember. Every meal, every laugh, every moment I missed. I remember it all. The twins fed impatiently, their small hands steady, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and love. Just a little more, father, Teo said, offering a spoonful of rice. He took it slowly, swallowing carefully. This is perfect, he whispered. It's more than perfect. I am home. Mama Aid placed her hand gently on his shoulder. Yes, you are home. And this year, Christmas will be special because we are together. That is what matters. The twins continued to feed him, laughing softly now, careful and tender. Their father's eyes never left theirs, filled with gratitude, love, and the quiet joy of a man who had waited 15 long years for this moment. And in that small, simple meal, shared with laughter, tears, and the taste of home, the family began to heal. Outside, the city continued its busy hum, but inside the walls of that house, there was only warmth, love, and the promise of never being separated again. The days after the reunion moved slowly, but word of the father's return spread like wildfire. Whispers in the streets, in the market, at the church, they all reached the ears of the powerful man who had framed him 15 years ago. The man who had smiled cruelly as the community turned against an innocent man now found himself at the center of a very different kind of attention. It began with quiet murmurs. Traders who had once believed his lies now exchanged glances. Neighbors who had avoided the family out of loyalty or fear now whispered under their breath. It was all lies, one said. All of it. He never stole a kobo. Soon, the whispers grew louder. The man who had framed the father was confronted in the market square. You lied, a woman called, her voice trembling with anger. You ruined a man's life. Do you have no shame? He stammered, trying to form a defense, but the words stuck in his throat. The crowd pressed closer, murmuring accusations and shaking heads. Some cried, finally seeing the truth after years of following Fawcett. Some turned away, ashamed to have supported him. Mama Aid and her family watched from a distance. The father stood quietly beside them, his posture calm, his gaze steady. The twins held tightly to his hands, unsure of how to react to the anger swirling around the man who had caused them so much pain. Finally, the father spoke. His voice carried over the murmurs, calm but firm, full of a weight that silenced the crowd. I don't want revenge, he said, looking directly at the man who had framed him. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I never wanted to punish. I only wanted to find my family, to be with my children, to be with my wife again. The crowd fell silent. Even the powerful man seemed frozen, unable to speak, unable to meet the eyes of the man he had wronged. I want peace, the father continued, voice steady and full of conviction. Peace in my heart, peace in my family, and peace in this community. What has been done cannot be undone, but hate will not bring back the years we lost. Only love can do that. Teo whispered to Tunde, still holding his father's hand. He's amazing. Even after everything, he doesn't want revenge. Tunde shook his head. No, he just wants us. He just wants peace. Mama Aid's hands trembled as she held her husband's arm. You've always been strong, stronger than anyone else could be, she whispered. The powerful man finally found his voice, though it was weak, almost a whisper. I was wrong. I never thought. You caused enough pain already, the father said quietly, not with anger, but with finality. Learn from it. Don't let lies ruin another life. The community, witnessing this, began to murmur again, this time not with shame, but with admiration. They saw the man who had suffered for 15 years choose forgiveness over revenge, love over hatred. Children watched quietly, learning a lesson about courage, patience, and the power of mercy. And in the middle of the market square, the father, mother, and twins stood together, a family reunited, stronger than any injustice could ever break, teaching everyone around them that true strength lies not in revenge, but in love, in patience, and in the courage to forgive. After the father returned and the truth was revealed, life for the family slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. But Mama Aid and her husband knew that their story could not end with just their reunion. The lessons of the past, the pain, the injustice, the mockery the twins had once joined, needed to reach others. The father, once a beggar himself, still carried the memory of those long, lonely years. He remembered the shame, the hunger, the cold nights, and the cruel laughter of strangers. And now, with his family beside him, he wanted to make sure that no one else suffered as he had. One morning, Mama Aid, the father, and the twins went to the same market where they had first recognized him. But this time, they did not come to shop or to walk through the streets unnoticed. They came with a mission. Look around, children, the father said quietly, kneeling to speak to Teo and Tunde. These people, many of them have nothing. Some have been hurt by life. Some are ignored, forgotten, even laughed at. We must help them. We must defend them. The twins nodded solemnly, their laughter of past cruelty replaced with quiet understanding. We'll help, father, Tunde said. We won't laugh anymore. We'll stand with them. The family began small. They offered food, clean water, and warm clothing to those sitting by the roadside, the beggars who had always been invisible to the bustling crowds. Teo handed a bundle of rice to a woman with a small child. Here, you can eat, he said softly. The woman's eyes widened, tears forming, as she whispered her thanks. The father watched, a gentle smile on his face. Every act of kindness matters, he said. Even one small meal can give someone hope. As days passed, they became a familiar presence in the market. They defended those who were mocked or ignored. If someone pointed fingers or whispered cruel words, the father would speak firmly, his voice carrying over the market noise. Do not mock. Do not judge. Every life has value.